Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions here to talk about Extended Family, Season 1, Episode 9, The Consequences of Helping People. The episode description reads as follows, and by the way, I'm also here with Stacie. I doubt I introduced her. My bad. For some reason, that is not in my Extended Family notes.
Yeah, that's not in your template for this show,
Yes,
so you forget me. That's
so,
okay.
so I'm going to have to go back and include that. But anyway, the episode's description reads as follows. Julia helps Jim get out of a jam by lying to get his friend's daughter into an exclusive private school. Bobby and Grace go shopping at a thrift store. The episode was written by James Widows and directed by Victor Levin. Before going further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Second, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. All right, so before we talk about this episode,
Okay.
I was listening to Donald Faison and Scott Braff's podcast on Scrubs, the show that they started together with.
Yeah.
And they were talking, I believe it was a very late series episode, Soul for the Song or something like that, part 2. It was basically the janitor's wedding, did you watch Scrubs at all?
I saw a few episodes, but not enough to know any continuity.
It really doesn't matter, that part of it. The episode doesn't matter. But what was funny to me is that Scott Braff was describing to Donald Faison what one of those watches is that measures your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Faison had no idea what this was. And by the way, he was working on Extended Family when that podcast went up. So it was just kind of funny to me because that occurred in an episode with him, the character that he plays, measuring his sleep. But he had no idea what that actually was when he was on the podcast. Scott Braff was describing to him what it actually does. And I found that kind of amusing. And I also love the trend of stars of former shows talking about their shows. I really love that. It's a lot of fun. And anyway, your thoughts on this week's episode.
Okay, so it's pretty similar to the last few. I liked it. It was fun. We got some Grandpa Bobby stuff, which I love. We learned some new things this episode. Mm-hmm. Like we learned that Mrs. Grandpa Bobby is no longer with us.
Yes, that was important.
I had previously made an assumption that there was a grandma involved because we got that whole story about the dogs, which sounded like it was being told in present tense.
Right.
That we have these dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And now we learn there is no we. So this was an old story that was just being told in a different tense.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that those dogs were long gone at this point, but
the way the story was being told, he was telling it like they are our dogs, not like, hey, we had these dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I thought it was a current story.
Gotcha.
With him and, his wife, but it wasn't. We actually have a Quantum Leap reference, not a reference, but a connection.
Oh, we do?
In this episode.
Okay.
And I actually took to Twitter, and I told out to the Twitter ethos on X there. There is a connection to the original Quantum Leap in this episode. And I said, can anybody tell me what it is before we record this podcast? I said, we have a couple days this week before we record. Can anybody tell me? And I did get the answer. Somebody knew.
I wish I had seen this post. Okay, so what was the answer?
You've clearly been very busy this week. If you didn't see any of my posts.
I was.
There was a lot going on this week, though, in our TV world, outside of Extended Family, though.
Yep.
A lot of things to keep up with. But Twitter user at Tina Alsgirl knew what the connection was, and that is the actress Nancy Lenehan, who plays Rose in this episode.
Oh, okay.
She was on an episode of Quantum Leap.
Which one?
She played Colleen McBain, the older sister of Katie McBain.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so that was a fun little connection. And
I mean, I never would have recognized her because she's
I
quite
tried.
old.
I tried looking. I couldn't tell, but I mean, it's in her IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
And she also was in an episode that links to a friend of the channel, Jessie Targum, that you that you communicate with, daughter of Tommy Thompson, original writer of Quantum Leap. And I remember she made a comment telling you all about this other show that she was involved with.
Okay.
As a assistant casting director.
Yes.
Or something along those lines. I probably said it wrong. That show being Freaky Links.
Yes.
And Nancy
Which we can't-
Lanahan
yeah.
was also in an episode of that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I tried to find a way to watch that show. It's not streaming anywhere. I'm sure I could maybe buy it, but yeah, I have not been able to find that show anywhere. Well, that's very interesting. Oh, one more thing. Donald Faison said that if there is a season 2, Scott Braff will make an appearance.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
We got an appearance in this episode, actually. I'll bring it up now since you say that, of one of John Cryer's former guest stars.
Okay.
And that is Kelly Stables. Excuse me. And she played Kate McKay on this. That's the woman that works admissions at the school.
Okay.
And she actually appeared as John Cryer's character Alan's girlfriend, Melissa, on Two and a Half Men.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, and she also was in Superstore. She played Kelly on that show.
Yep.
So that was her that was playing the school admissions lady.
Gotcha.
In this episode. So that's fun when you can like pull in people that you recognize from other things, that especially when it's, connected to people in the show.
All right, so I admit a little bit to saying that I cannot actually tell you what my opinion of it is on this episode.
Okay.
The main reason for that is I worked a really long day, had to go home and take notes on the season finale of Quantum Leap, a double episode, and I hadn't done my homework. I don't know why I did this to myself. I should have watched the episode prior to doing all this because we had the screeners, so I had plenty of time to do it. But I procrastinated, as I tend to do. So after doing, watching those episodes and taking the notes on those episodes, which was a giant pain in the butt, after working a 9-hour day and sitting down to watch this episode, it kind of hampered my enjoyment of it.
You weren't looking for that.
Right. I was basically looking at this episode to do I guess so. Our esteemed colleague or friend and husband to you, Adam Wilcox, is back from his trip to Burger King. So yeah, I was not watching this episode for enjoyment. I was watching it to do a podcast on it, basically.
Okay.
But I will tell you that I did really like the Grace and Bobby part of this story.
Yeah.
The rest of it, it doesn't do much for me. But
yeah, it's not fantastic or anything, but it's still fun.
Now, I don't know if my opinion on that would be different
if you had been a little more relaxed when you were watching.
Right, exactly. I mean, at this point, I was like, I just want this note-taking stuff to be done, but let it be known that I suffer just to entertain you guys. And I hope you appreciate it.
Well, let's dig into it then.
All right.
Because we need to wrap this up so we can go eat our food before it gets too cold.
All right. So the episode opens with Grace giving Jim a Dad of the Year sweater.
It was World's Greatest Dad, and she was actually asking him if she can give it away because it shrank. She said, "You're not going to wear this anymore. It's too small now," and he doesn't want to get rid of it. He's trying to convince her that it still fits, and he proceeds to force it over his head, which looked really uncomfortable.
And Grace starts to act like he's giving birth. And then when he successfully gets it over his head, it's a dad. And that's where our credits start. So when we come back from that, Jim and Jimmy are going to lunch with his oldest friends. Jimmy is dressed up, and Jimmy asks, shouldn't we be honest about who we are?
Well, okay, so before that, he's dressed like a hobo.
Okay.
Like, literally, we've seen this kid dress normal, right?
Yeah.
He's not dressed normal, he's dressed like a hobo, and Jim sent him back twice to change his clothes.
Right.
Before eventually just putting the kid in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to find some middle ground here that they did not find.
Yeah, the suit kind of looked silly on him, for sure. But, yeah. So he's like, oh, shouldn't we be honest? And he's like, well, yeah, sure, to other people we should be honest. But to everybody else, or actually, to us we should be honest. But to everybody else, it's a lies and deception for everybody else, basically.
Yeah, but there's definitely some truth to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You always want to put on your best face when you're facing the world.
Basically, he doesn't want to look like the bad dad that he actually kind of is.
Right.
I mean, okay, so Jim has his moments, both being completely awful and also being really good at his dad job at the same time. Like that episode with Grace, where he was trying to comfort. She was trying to comfort her friend, and then that whole dilemma, which I think was last week.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
The consequences of sleepovers.
Yes.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
He did a really good job in that episode being a dad. But he doesn't always do spectacular. I mean, they all kind of take turns.
And they've made that point.
Yeah,
Like that's what parenting is.
Yes,
is
absolutely.
making mistakes and learning as you go.
Right, absolutely. All right, so Grace and Grandpa Bobby are meanwhile going to go thrifting together.
Yeah, which I love that storyline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
I'm
my
a
favorite.
thrifter. I'm a reseller. I can get behind this story. Grandpa Bobby is just wearing his undershirt and a leather jacket, and Jim makes a joke calling him Fonzie and, asks where his shirt is. Apparently, Grace talked him into selling it because the way she thrifts is she brings stuff to the store to sell. So this is like more of a consignment-like thing than, a donation thrift store. So she brings stuff there to sell and then gets the credit to buy things.
Kind of like
store.
Goodwill?
No, Goodwill does not buy things from you.
You just give them stuff.
You just give them stuff.
Gotcha, okay. So, Jim and Jimmy are at the bar, and Jimmy is dressed up in a suit, and he says he feels like he has a court date. And he kind of looks like it, but thankfully I know that he's not quite the troublemaker that he might appear here. But Jim says today is important because he likes to be the guy who never forgets his friends.
Right.
And Jimmy says he would like to be that person too, but he has to have lunch with his father.
Yeah. And Jim orders him a rumless Coke, which will start a ongoing gag throughout this episode that I don't think I appreciated so much. I didn't find it. I didn't find it funny, but
I mean, the actor's delivery. I forgot his name all of a sudden. Ben Sweeney.
Ben Sweeney, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to give him something to do in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, he's funny as always.
Yeah.
His delivery is excellent.
He does great.
Yeah. But Jim's friend arrives. Jim's friends arrive.
Yeah, half a dozen very loud screaming men, including PDD.
Mm-hmm.
And PDD is played by Nicholas Torturo, who has an astonishing 115 acting credits.
Nicholas Torturo, really?
Nicholas Torturo.
Huh, that's funny because I totally did not recognize him.
Oh, so you know that person?
Yes, yeah, I actually do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of things that he's in.
Yeah, he's got 115 credits. A lot of stuff I noticed with Kevin James.
Yeah.
He appears with a lot.
So one of his friends, which I'm assuming is this PD guy, right?
Yes.
Announces that he had his friend, that he had Jim write a letter of recommendation for his daughter, and he's confident that she is going to get in because Jim gave that recommendation.
Right, and this is because Grace actually goes to this school. So Jim, being a parent of a current student, is why his letter was going to have some pull. And the school is called Our Lady of Sorrows.
Which is funny because that is it's pretty close to the hospital that Dana Scully works at in the revival of Quantum Leap, and actually in the movie prior to that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the same place. I could be wrong, but yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, that's a religious school. So
yeah,
Grace is going to a religious school?
It's a private girls' school.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which I don't think we knew that before.
No. But Jim is looking guilty as he's toasted. We cut to Grace and Bobby as they thrift together, and one of the dresses that they find has writing on it. And this seems to bum Bobby out, but we don't know why immediately.
There's a label on the dress that says, I belong to Rose Oliver, and he said he needs to go sit down. And you immediately felt like there's some sadness around this.
Right,
This belonged to somebody, you can tell. But before that happened, he was really excited about how much money he made selling his dirty clothes. But, I hate to tell them, they could have made at least 4 times more if they would have just sold this stuff online themselves.
Yeah, well, there you go. They should have consulted with you before doing this, really.
You're never going to make as much money in a local shop.
Okay, so we cut to Julia, who's meeting with the former governor, or is it current governor?
He's a former governor, Devin Monahan, and Governor Monahan is played by Charles Parnell.
And I guess he got canceled or something and he lost an election because of pronoun confusion of some type.
Yeah, there was a pronoun snafu.
Which, I occasionally have problems with, especially when we talk about Quantum Leap. So I can definitely relate. I'm not quite as old as this guy is, but I'm getting up there.
Yeah. So apparently that's what Julie is doing here, because that's what she does, is helps fix people's reputations, and she's here to pitch him her services to help him fix whatever happened here. And he's pretty bummed out. He's just the former governor. People don't take his calls anymore. He doesn't even want to be called governor, even though that's technically what you're supposed to call him. So Julia, the rest of the episode, just calls him former Governor Monahan.
Right. And she's interrupted by Jim using the bat signal. All right, explain this to me. there's a different ringtone for when there's trouble. How does this work?
I'm not sure how that works, but that's definitely what they're implying. Is this ringtone means emergency? Please take the call. And you would think Jim would use that a lot, knowing Jim.
Yeah. I'm just kind of, I don't know how that works. Like,
I don't know. Maybe he has a whole separate SIM phone number.
Oh, so he's calling from a different number?
I don't know.
To do this?
I don't know.
Okay. I thought maybe you, because you are a little more tech savvy.
Maybe it's an app.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
All right. So Jim's reason for calling, he needs her to get help. Oh, he needs her, to get his friend's daughter into college because he forgot to write the letter.
Oh, it's not college, it's high school.
It's high school that she needs this recommendation letter for?
Yeah, this is Grace's school that this girl's trying to get into.
Right, which I should have realized, but, anyway.
Because unlike Sophia, Grace is 14 years old.
Right, yeah. So he ends up talking her into it after a long-winded conversation.
Yeah, basically he said, I messed up, call them, like they love you, get her in, because the decisions are being made tomorrow, and he doesn't want to let his friend know that he messed up and forgot to send that letter. So
Julia ends up calling the school, in front of the governor, I might add, and personally vouches for this girl to the school and gets her accepted into the school.
She's never even met Denise.
Right.
She can't even remember the girl's name for 2 seconds. She has to look
consult
at
the text
her phone
message.
to even know who this girl is and what she's talking about. She's literally never met her. She's only met PDD a couple times, and she doesn't like him. But she lies to Kate, again played by Kelly Stables. And Kelly's like, oh, she didn't do good in her interview. We weren't going to accept her.
Right.
But because of Julia's personal recommendation, and we've been told Julia's quite active in the school, she chaperones, she volunteers. And she's like, because of your personal recommendation and you're personally vouching for her, sure, we're going to let her in.
So she ends up calling Jim back to tell him the good news. And the gang over there celebrates.
Yeah, and Petey buys everybody's lunch.
She returns to the governor, who was a witness to everything. And because she did not operate with integrity, she lost the governor's business because of the lies she told about this child.
Right. And he's telling us, the governor's not a bad guy.
We cut to Bobby and Grace, and Bobby reveals that the dress belonged to someone he once was going to marry, but it never ended up happening. He eventually went off to war, I believe he was saying.
Yeah, so the problem was that Rose was Jewish and he was Catholic, and her parents were not going to have that. And so he ended up enlisting in the army, which he doesn't recommend doing that as a cure for a broken heart, because then you're just heartbroken and being shot at, he said.
Right. And then you have PTSD on top of the
So I'm assuming he ended up going to Vietnam, because he says he got back in 1975, and by then Rose was married. And he went on to meet Grace's grandpa, and grandma. They had 44 wonderful years together before she passed.
Well, that's something new I didn't know about Bobby. Anyway.
But yeah, this is where we learned that Grandma is no longer with us. And you know what else it means? That Jim is actually meant to be at least a decade younger than John Cryer.
Yeah.
Because John Cryer was born in 1965, and he said he didn't even meet the mother until 1975. So.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, he could pass for that.
Jim is meant to be a little younger. I know there was some criticism about the age difference between John Cryer and Abigail Spencer. I mean, about if they were, a believable couple.
That's standard operating procedure. And, it does happen that men marry younger.
Right.
So.
But now it's been confirmed that he is meant to be a decade younger than his actor.
Gotcha. So Grace ends up... Oh, yeah. So he ends up... So... He always assumed that she would hold on to the dress, but when he saw it in the thrift store, he realized that was not the case, and he's bummed out about that.
Basically, that he didn't mean as much to her as she meant to him, and he had started this conversation by telling Grace what he really needs is a time machine.
Right.
We got one of those. If you want to head over to Quantum Leap.
Yes, definitely. You should definitely head over to our podcast on that episode if you haven't already. Actually, I'm not even sure what is going to air, but whatever. So great. Bobby's like, you know what? Boys are stupid. And Grace, hugs Bobby and says, well, not all boys are stupid, indicating that maybe Bobby isn't stupid. So Julia goes to Trey to get help with the former governor. And this is the first time he's appearing in this episode. He's not in the episode very much.
Right. So they're all at Trey's office. Everybody's there. Julia's yelling at Jim that he made her lose a client. And Trey's just like, I want to know why this is taking place here. And you know what? The answer is because They had to work you into the episode, Trey. You are a main cast member.
Right. Trey says, they try to convince him to get to talk to the former governor on her behalf to fix the situation.
Yeah, because they said he speaks the same language.
Right.
Being like rich and famous or whatever.
And
although isn't this Julia's literal job?
Right.
You should be able to handle your own problems because this is what you do for other people.
Right.
Meanwhile, Jimmy's getting fake drunk on another fake cocktail.
Mm-hmm. And he's saying he has a fake drinking problem, which I found his line read of that particularly funny. Maybe not the entire thread, but I like that line read. But yeah, so basically, Trey's like, well, you're all gonna fall on your swords multiple times to fix the situation and tell the governor who you actually are. So Trey ends up going to the governor with Julia and Jim. They explain their codependent relationship, and Jimmy so that's actually where that happens.
Yeah.
Jimmy admits to a fake drinking problem.
Yeah, everybody has something to say. Trey's introduced everybody. Jim talks about, Julia and the divorce and the codependency, and Julia pretty much says, she shouldn't even answer the phone for him, but she, she's compelled to help him, and she goes into lie or die mode for him. And then Jimmy was given a chance to speak. I don't know why. And that's when he said he has a pretend drinking problem.
Right.
Not sure that statement's going to help you win the governor over.
Right. Yeah, you guys are crappy parents. Anyway, I mean, we all know this, but whatever. So all this explaining seems to work somehow.
Yeah, the governor explains, how he knows what it's like not to have to say no to favors.
Right.
And basically, Julia should have said no to this favor is the point.
Right. Grace returns to Bobby at the nest. And when she know it, she has Rose in tow. And they have a little bit of reunion, and apparently her grandkids sold the dress, not her.
Yeah, so she said her husband died, and the grandkids who were into thrifting went through the closet and ended up selling some of her stuff along with the husband's that she didn't want them to get rid of. Oh, and the whole reason that Grace was able to find her is because the thrift store just gave her Rose's address.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
That's a big no-no.
Right. I don't know who you are, but sure, you can have this random person's address.
Yeah, no, that's a problem. Bad store.
Right, yeah. So there's a lawsuit potentially in their future. This all makes Bobby very happy, but Grace has one last surprise. She brought the dress from the thrift store. They end up catching up, and Bobby tactfully says, "Oh, so your husband is dead now."
Yeah.
And when I say tactfully, I'm being very, very, very sarcastic there. So then we have Jim's friend in the credit stinger. His daughter
PDD. So he's come and he wants to celebrate his daughter Denise getting into the school, and he's pouring champagne for everybody. The adults are all in the kitchen, and he said he also wanted to introduce Denise to Grace because they're going to be going to school together.
Right.
And, she needs a friend to help show her the ropes. And Julia cannot get this girl's name right still.
Right.
I forget what she calls her here, but she's called her like 6 different names throughout this episode. None of them are Denise. She also gets the name of the school wrong in this episode. And, I watched this a couple times and I'm like, I can't tell if that's intentional or not. If Julia doesn't know the name of her daughter's school, or if this was like a misread of the script.
So, I would say that men are generally the ones who don't quite get those kind of details right, whereas women are usually pretty good at that.
Right?
So, I don't know. That makes her particularly look bad.
The name of the school is Our Lady of Sorrows, and she said something, I didn't write it in my notes, but something along the line of Our Lady of Ladies.
And, the daughter turns out to be a crazy person who wants to burn down the school and, beat the patriarchy and this and that.
Yeah, we just got this one moment with Denise, but you can clearly tell why her interview went bad and they didn't want to accept her. Denise being played by Ariana Alavia. This girl looked so familiar to me, but she only has a handful of credits and I didn't recognize any of them. So she must just have one of those faces. Maybe she was in a commercial or something that I recognize her
perhaps.
Because, that stuff doesn't end up on IMDb.
And then we have an interview which includes Jim, Trey, and Julia, and they end up saying that perhaps this is why she did badly on her interview, and that it's too late now. The kid is already in the school, and they're going to face the consequences.
Julia's reputation on campus is wrecked. They don't want her volunteering anymore or chaperoning. She's in trouble with the school. And I really found that well done. This was the only interview style scene that we had in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
They put it right at the end, so it actually landed in chronological order.
Yeah.
Like the interview scenes always take place after the events of the episode, no matter where they put them within the episode.
Right.
And I like this. It was very subtle. That it's like, oh yeah, there's our interview scene, but it's like just kind of tucked in the credits.
Right, yeah. So yeah, that's our episode.
So I hope we get to see more of Rose and, Grandpa gets a girlfriend. That would be fun.
Yeah.
She seemed like a sweetheart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's nice that they got to reconnect.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't go the way of how sitcoms go often, that we forget her existence again and never hear about her again, because that would be a little sad for Bobby.
It would be. It would be indeed. All right, so overall a decent episode. I said that, my situation kind of hampered my enjoyment of it, but maybe when I revisit it at some point, I'll feel about it differently, and I'll just, it'll go up in my esteem. But yeah, so any other thoughts that we want to talk about?
There is one more thing I wanted to mention.
Okay.
This past weekend, NBC hosted the People's Choice Awards.
Ah, yes.
Now, nothing of particular interest to us that I want to say about the awards. I did vote in them, but I don't even remember anything I voted for, so there couldn't have been anything. I was too excited. I didn't watch the awards.
Gotcha.
But I did notice, going into our screener access, that People's Choice Awards popped up with a little new icon on it. So I clicked on it. They'd uploaded all these pictures from the event. And our cast of extended family, the 3 adults in the cast, were very prominent.
Really?
In the People's Choice Awards. I don't know if they gave an award, did a host. I don't know what they did. Maybe they hosted the red carpet. I don't know what they did, but there was 20 pictures of the 3 of them.
Oh, well.
Among the pictures of the People's Choice Awards.
And we're talking Donald Faison, John Cryer, and Abigail Spencer?
Yes, the 3 of them were together.
Because there's a 4th adult.
Well, but they're the 3
that
are the main cast.
Gotcha.
And so the NBC's pushing them, to have them appear and making them quite visible at this award ceremony.
I would say that the ratings are at least comparable to Quantum Leap before it made the time switch. It seems pretty close. So, and also in its favor for a possible second season is the fact that it's a sitcom and it's way cheaper to produce.
Right.
So, and also behind this show is some pretty important people. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking there's some pretty good odds.
There's definitely some optimism here. We got to see how the rest of the season plays out. This was episode, what? 9? So we've got 4 left.
Wow.
Just 4 more. Can you believe it's going so fast?
I'm so shocked, honestly. All right. Do we have anything else to say?
No.
All right.
I don't have any information about the next episode, so we will bring it to you once we see it.
All right. We would like to hear from you. What did you think of the podcast? What did you think of the episode? Stacie can be reached at?
Reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support your channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a way to support content creators such as ourselves. And you can do a membership for $1.99 a month. That will help the channel. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off.